Welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and I'm joined by a special guest today.
Why, hello. This is Jonathan, known as Chill MTG. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing great, man. Tell us about yourself and your history in the game before we get rolling for listeners who may not have checked out your awesome YouTube channel.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I'm an enfranchised Magic player. Been playing for quite some time. Kind of like all of us, started early at a younger age, took a long break, and then came back to the game in about 2013, 2014 with Gatecrash, and then discovered Cube, the best format in Magic. No, I love Gatecrash just because, right, it was super aggressive, right? If you didn't have a 2-drop on turn 2, you just
we've made the jokes about Maze's End before. Maze's End being the greatest Magic set of all time. I think our listeners will 100% agree. Long uncomfortable pause.
but found Cube in 2017. Just throwing my favorite cards together, and then just been working on Cube, meeting a lot of cool folks like yourself in the Cube community. And just really loving it. So been doing Cube since 2017, and it's excited to be on the show, man. Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate it. We appreciate it. We couldn't actually, it's just you and I going solo today because my host, Stu, he's currently out. He's on a mini little vacation, so I figured I would take the reins and run with it a little bit here and have some fun. For today's topic, we're going to cover something that we recently enjoyed here at CubeCon, which was the two-headed giant cube, the elusive two-headed giant, and all the strange mechanics and ideas become behind it. But before we do that, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube, and we're going to enjoy our refreshment of the show. Today is going to be very unique because it is currently 10:36 a.m. Eastern Time. So, Chill, what are you having in your current time zone this morning?
Yeah, well, I'm in Central Time, so here in the Midwest, fall is coming. So I actually have a Starbucks pumpkin spice pour over coffee with the a full heavy cream there to kind of settle it out. So don't at me, but I do like the pumpkin spice.
Fancy. Are you wearing the UGG boots to complement your coffee this morning?
Yeah, no, it
was gonna happen. I am enjoying the arch enemy of Starbucks, Caribou, which is way better. Caribou coffee is actually their Caribou blend, which is pretty good stuff with a little bit of hint of light cream, and we are good to go. Other than that, we're going to do our normal not the pop and fizz, but we're going to move on to our topic of the show. And I'm going to start it out. It is going to be a two-headed giant cube, kind of a top-down, how might a curator and or a player work to design one of these interesting, weird things. It's going to be a Battle Bond inspired environment. That's where I actually hosted mine from. Love that set. Before we even get rolling down that, Chill, did you get an opportunity to actually rock some Battle Bond when it rolled out?
I did not get an opportunity. I was, I would consider myself back in the day more of the spike mentality.
Yeah.
And so, those sets like Battle Bond, or multiplayer sets, I actually wasn't too interested in those sets, but I got to tell you, playing your two-headed giant cube out at CubeCon kind of turned me around on that, opened my eyes.
Yeah, it's fun.
Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's probably got that unusual. It's got that moniker attached to it that it's going to be EDH centric, but it's not. It's more of two players trying to play their individual game. So let me step it back. So the way I envisioned this cube when I first designed it, and this is going to be for all the boomers and the Sesame Street aficionados out there, they used to have these two purple giants that would literally could never get along, a two-headed giant. And one would say something, the other one would go ba 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 ba, and the other one would go ba 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 ba. And they essentially did not understand a word the other one was saying. That was literally what I envisioned when I first started designing this particular cube. I wanted to make an environment that where you would actually try to design your own deck. You would not share information with your other player because it's unbeknownst to you. And then within our friend circle, we would randomize the idea of who your partner who your partner would be. And then we'd pair you up. And then I just wanted to see the magic happen. I want to see two players figure out how to find cohesion on the fly. And as Chill just recently said, he and Stu pretty much didn't see what either were building. We rolled out for random partners. They paired up, and you guys pretty much crushed us, didn't I? Christian and I just got obliterated by you two. It was a little embarrassing.
Yeah. Hey, so even though, I'm an enfranchised player, when I first started playing your two-headed giant cube, like I really didn't know the rules of two-headed giant. Should we go over some of just what two-headed giant
is? 100%. So what you're going to have is it's basically two players. It's going to be a pod of 4, 2v2. And you're going to have a shared life total, which is essentially going to be 30 lives shared across each playmat. And whenever you do your attacks, you're actually attacking the singular giant, but the partners can block for one another, if you will. They're able to throw blockers and defend one another. You're also going to, as the two partners, you're going to simultaneously draw and play your main phases and your upkeeps, etc., all going to be within succinct, and you're able to share knowledge between your two hands. So it's going to create collaboration between two Magic players. Even cooler if they're strangers sometimes, because you get to adapt a new player's playstyle. Kind of like Chill and Stu, where they just literally had never sat side by side as pilot and co-pilot, and then they just flew in and totally decimated both Christian and I, who had played together. The sad part is we play together often. We got crushed. You guys rocked the Golos deck, didn't you?
Yeah, I think Stu had some Golos and I was on control, just protecting him until he could spin that wheel.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting about this is one person can be the aggressor as the partner, and the other one could be the support or the utilitarian, making sure you're uplifting the other player to help them get across the finish line so they can attack the other dual players. So let's kind of go over the basics of what I've built here. You're going to draft 3 packs. It's going to be 15 traditional drafts. You build and choose your partner, and then you kind of let the chaos begin. But in my unique scenario, I like to have the individuals build their 2 decks, and then I like to roll for random partners, but that's just a flavor of the month for my play group. Understandably so, something like CubeCon, no one really wants to 100% get paired up with a bunch of randos because, you want to know who your Goose and Maverick are. I get that idea, but, to each their own. In my particular environment, I have a 480 design, which supports 4 teams or 8 drafters. And that can be modified to 4 packs if you want to see more density within the cube. Like I said, in many of our particular casts, I use a top-down design, kind of focusing on the team and partner mechanics, which we'll cover shortly. Normally, like I said, we draft 3 packs of 15, and then we randomize within our play group. But that's to be changed. And as we mentioned before, the partners, the teams, start out with 30 shared life. And then in this particular environment, which will be shared in the show notes, I use a lot of jank cards, a lot of fun and flavor stuff. Kind of we talked about before. I host a lot of squirrels, aristocrats, as Chill was talking about. I've got Golos in there for a high-powered level, but for the sole purpose of spinning that wheel. And then lastly, damage is directed at the team unless a card specifies a particular player. And that's very limited in this environment. I want it so that you hit the team. Cards are focused on the keyword target, which means stuff like Sign in Blood would be a good example where it says target player loses 2 life and draws 2 cards. Well, maybe you don't want to draw the 2 cards. Maybe you actually want Chill to draw the 2 cards so he can get the advantage, and or you can go across the table and 2 for them if you had 2 for lethal, which is interesting and cool way. Have you ever done that before, Chill? You ever killed anybody with a Sign in Blood? I have. It's amazing.
No, yeah, not with a Sign in Blood, but there was when we drafted your cube at CubeCon, and cards are going around the table. One of the things that didn't immediately kick me in the face, but then I figured out after I read it a couple times with the way that the target opponents and players are kind of treated in the 2-headed cube environment. You had a card called Scheming Symmetry, which was in there. And let me read the rule text. So Scheming Symmetry is a sorcery for 1 black. And the text says, choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. So, in a 1v1 kind of scenario, you got to choose your opponent, right? But when we're playing 2v2 here in 2-headed giant, and Stu was on my team, I just looked over at Stu and said, "Wait, hey, I'm gonna choose you and choose me, and then each of us are gonna go search for a card and put it on top." And you and Christian over there, Anthony, just kind of had to throw up your hands and watch us just completely. I mean, it's like a broken demonic tutor,
It
right?
is.
So that was a cool example of how the cards rules interact.
And I know that card is exceptionally OP, but I leave it in there just for the lulz. This is a fun environment, and what I like too about this particular two-headed giant thing is it's problem and solution based, right? And what I enjoy watching is the interaction using you and Stu sitting across from me, and you both did the scheming symmetry. Sure, we're probably going to die from it, but for me as a curator, I'm enjoying the fact that you two are over there mumbling, trying to solve an equation, right, on the other side of the table. So I leave cards like that in there in particular, even though I know they're super powerful, but I'm actually just enjoying the show, if you will. It's literally a dinner show for me as a curator, sitting there like, oh my gosh, they're going to get something awesome. Or maybe they're going to totally screw it up. Or they're going to bicker amongst themselves, having no idea what they should get for a solution. So that's why I introduce those in that environment.
I think it's a unique joy, right? As a cube curator, just watching anyone draft your environment and just see how they
100%. And as we mentioned before, Battle Bond was what really inspired me to do this. And to include, I actually have the basic lands from Battle Bond, which have that amazing stadium, which I'm looking forward to Battle Bond 2. I'm hoping Wizards of the Coast rolls that out soon. It was just such an amazing set that was able to allow me to curate such a cool cube. I do want to give a shout out for some of the inspirations or people who I guess crafted ideas from, and that would be both Tuesday Tastic. He has a two-headed giant cube, and Carmen Handy has an amazing proliferate cube. And I incorporated some of the mechanics and ideas they had within those. They really inspired me to emphasize like counters and more of those targeting interactions. So what I like about this type of cube is you can pull from other genres. Like traditional cube is 1v1, where Chill and I are sitting across the table trying to get each other dead. Whereas this one, I got to look for words when the word target isn't necessarily what it means in every other environment. And that's kind of what he was emphasizing a minute ago, where that tutor card, scheming symmetry, wouldn't be so viable unless you're doing some kind of a troop slug or a hug deck in Commander. In this particular environment, it's very powerful, and it makes you think outside the box as a curator. Within this particular, I have some proxied, or that word that we don't use, altered. I'm going to use the word altered AB duels, fetches, shocks, and I've got the bond lands, and I have some utilities. And then I run 4 guild slots. Overall, from a table that'll be included in the show notes, just from the design wirework perspective for people to see, the creature count within the environment's about 236 creatures. I've got 12 planeswalkers. I have 56 instants, 69 sorceries, 46. It's a diversity within this cube, and it's focusing on cards that really help lift up those ideas of the word target, or assisting your partner, or going into both a aggressive role and or a supportive role within your team. Chill, would you mind covering some of these supported themes on that first one, starting with partners, please?
Yeah. Well, so before we jump into that, and why do something I learned after drafting and playing this environment? It's like, what would drive a cube curator to really want to build a two-headed giant cube? And I have a short list of reasons of why I think this was a great kind of environment to build. So first of all, I don't know about y'all. I know sometimes it's hard to get a full pod together, right? That full, that 8-person pod to fire your cube with. What was super cool about the two-headed giant, it was just me and 3 other friends, right? So just 4 of us together can quote unquote fire a draft of two-headed giant and then match up and play, right? And so you don't really feel like you're missing out because you don't have those other 4 players to do a full pod. So if you're a curator that's struggling to get a full 8-person pod, maybe this two-headed giant thing can work out, because it is a lot of fun. Second of all, on that same kind of axis, we always don't necessarily have like 4 or 5 hours to commit to do a full draft and then a full 3 matches in an 8-player pod. And if you're just drafting with 4 folks total, you can draft and then play a couple matches 2v2, and even switch up partners, not redraft decks, and play again 1 or 2 times. So you can get a kind of full match, league feel in, even though you're not doing a full draft with 3 full matches. Additionally, I'll add in that, and again, this is going back to, I was kind of a spike and didn't think I would like this environment, but holy geez, was team gameplay incredibly fun. There's something about working with a teammate to take down, the players on the other side of the table that was incredibly rewarding. Usually when you're in a 1v1 game, all the pressure is on you. You feel like your decisions, you might be making the wrong decision, or you might feel like you're making the right decision. But when you're in a team context, you're able to collaborate together, show each other your hands, come up with a combined gameplay, and you really feel like you're working together, which really put a positive spin on, the 2v2 competitive portion of this game.
I'll add something to that too, to expound upon that. It is also a fantastic way to learn lines of play perhaps you didn't realize you didn't know. Let's just say, for example, yes. I'm sitting next to you and I see you pull off, let's use Sign in Blood. Let's keep it simple. Let's pretend that my entire Magic career I've been using Sign in Blood to lose 2 life and draw 2 cards. Unbeknownst to me, I never paid attention to the word target. And then I see, and that's how you learn these things. And they seem very minuscule, but then you see another player go, oh, you've got 2 life over there. When here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do instead. You guys draw 2 cards, you're dead. I know that's simple, but that's an example where you may not have realized or understood certain lines of play. That was a very simple one, and I do acknowledge that, but it can be a great learning environment. So if you were trying to teach someone or culture someone into IE Cube or just learning how to play Magic, this is a good way to bring in, like, I have a son. He's 15 years old. I can make him in my wingman, and I can show him how I'm making decisions within my hand, because it's a very cultured learning environment. In addition to, it's competitive, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's that collaborative gameplay. Just the specific multiplayer nature of two-headed environment immediately, in my opinion, moves the spectrum of, hey, let me spike this draft so I can win, to more of, hey, let's do something cool and have fun, because I know it's more of a casual 2v2 environment. Not to say that the gameplay is not competitive. The gameplay can be very interactive and competitive, but just the feeling being on a team with another person, in my opinion, move that spectrum less towards spike the draft and more towards, hey, let's do something cool and fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Together. Yeah, and then lastly, for reasons why someone should look at building a 2-headed giant cube, it kind of had to do with variance, right? So Magic, a highly variant game, and when you may feel in a 1v1 format, my opening hand is all lands, or hey, I'm getting mana flooded or screwed. That can still happen, right, in a single, in a 2-headed giant game, but you have a partner right next to you. So in theory, your opening hand isn't 7 cards, it's 14 cards, right? And your partner may have a great opening while you might be a little slower to get your lands or get your engine going. And it's that it kind of reduces variance.
I would agree with that.
It's much less of a chance for both of you to not have your game plan works versus just one of you at least trying to.
Yeah, and as we mentioned,
those are just a couple of
as we mentioned too, in a particular 2-headed environment, the other person can act as your shield and one can act as the sword, right? So if you're not prepared, as Chill just mentioned, and you're developing your let's just say your Oath of Druids, and you're doing a development, you want to get all your cards organized, you want to start building up to that idea and control the situation. Your partner, i.e. Stu, to the left of him, can then control the environment, lay down blockers, do the necessary board wipes, whatever they got to do to ensure that he can pull off, but Chill can pull off his particular strategy. So it does create, as you said, it does reduce that variance and does hurt that. It does bring down that mana screw or mana burn type situations, right? Which leads into something that's highly thematic that I was leading off before, the idea of partners. And there are some very specific partners that you can include to help this. I'll go over the first 2, and then I'll just leave all the names, etc. They'll be within the show notes so that you can visually see them. But we'll start out with these first 2, and it's Yukima, the Stalking Shadow, and pairs with Kazur, and I'm going to mess these names up, Ruthless Stalker. Yukima is, go ahead.
Can you read the partner text?
Oh, yeah. Let's be clear.
Like, how does partner work?
Yeah, so partner with Kazur, the Ruthless Stalker. When this creature enters the battlefield, target player, keyword target, can put Kazur into their hand from their library, then shuffle. So the gist is and you don't know because you're drafting as individuals. And that's kind of where I consider this the achievement unlocked. It happens sometimes, and or you can draft this for yourself if you want to do something fun. But it's even cooler if I'm playing with Chill and he just so happens to have one of these cards. If I play Yukima, he can go seek out Kazur because he'll go, oh man, I got that in my deck. And he can basically tutor it up and put it into his hand, which is even cooler. But you can also run these within a pair and build behind these and make yourself. You can build a Sultai deck. But let's talk about what these two do. So Yukima, the Stalking Shadow, can't be blocked. When Yukima leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player and you gain X life for its power. Then we look over at Kazur. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So essentially they're tutors from one another, and it makes for a fun play experience. I thought it's very flavorful. I do realize that the power level isn't the strongest, but at the same time, I didn't want this particular cube to represent power level. I wanted this cube to represent jank and fun and kind of bring in the best ideas of EDH, but the best ideas of cube simultaneously. Chill, would you mind covering these next two? And it's just because they're fun, and then we'll move past the partners.
So another partner card is Shabraz the Sky Shark, which is an Azorius card for 3 white-blue. It's got flying. States whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Shabraz, and you gain 1 life. Has an activated ability for hybrid Azorius. Target human gains flying until end of turn, and it is a 3/3. And it partners with Braylon Sky Shark Rider, and Braylon is 3 and a red for a 3/3 that states when you discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Braylon, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent with an activated ability of red. Target shark gains trample until end of turn.
Yeah, so the idea behind this, and let me explain. I recently pulled this off where my partner at the time, Jason, another person that's been on the show recently, Dr. Brinkley, he just so happened to have these other piece in there. And we pulled this off together. All this resulted in was a giant high five at the table. That's all I want for this cube, is to be competitive, but also for the lulz. And then if you notice the keyword he read with Braylon, whenever you discard a card, put a 1/1 counter on Braylon, Sky Shark Rider, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. That translates to basically 2 damage to their entire team because each individual is considered the opponent, even though they're a singular giant. So that's how these keywords are going to bend a little bit, which leads us into our next subcategory, and I'll cover this one. It's going to be Aristocrats. And Aristocrats uses that same concept, and we'll start out using Zulaport Cutthroat. And for 1 colorless and 1 swamp, you get a creature, human, rogue, ally. Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, and it's a 1/1. So the way it'll work out is if one of your creatures died, they'll basically lose 2 as their team, and you'll gain 1 for your team. And it just makes for an interesting swingy type games. Chill, would you mind covering this next really cool ability?
So this is assist, right? So this was a battle bond mechanic, and I'll give an example here. So assist, the way the rules text reads, another player can pay up to X or a specified amount of this spell's cost. So you and your partner, right, your 2-headed giant, can work together to tap your mana together to cast a really powerful spell. So the example here that I'll use is a black card from Battle Bond. It's Gang Up for X and a black. It has the rules text assist, and it says destroy target creature with power X or less. So if you have that real powerful creature on the other side of the battlefield, you and your partner can work together to destroy that creature by combining your resources.
And that's the type of environment I'm trying to foster in this environment is, as Chill mentioned it, this is not intended to be a spike. Sure, there can be 2 spikes. That's cool and horrible at the same time. But what I want is for you to collaborate with your partner. So I'm putting cards in there that force you to solve, problem solution together. I want to see the 2 purple heads from Sesame Street, the 2-headed giants, mumbling amongst themselves and going, yeah, let's do that. That's what I'm trying to foster this environment. The next one we're going to cover that follows up with Gang Up will be Out of Bounds. And for 3 colorless and 1 blue, you get an instant assist counter target spell. So again, it's that you're sharing resources as a team. And this art has 2 homunculi, I guess that's what we'll call it when you have 2 homunculus, together forming, like a mana shield to protect one another. And that's what I wanted. This art really depicts what I'm trying to do with this particular environment. It'll be included in the show notes as well. But assist as an entire mechanic is just It's just gorgeous for this environment. It forces the two heads to collaborate. Problem solution. Let's solve this together. High five and get it done. All right. So Chill, would you mind covering the next portion and we'll go over how that works?
Yeah, no problem. So I just want to talk about rules of Battlecry and Battalion and how they work in Two-Headed Giant, right? So because in Two-Headed Giant, you attack, block as a team, and all those actions happen together as a singular team. Battlecry, for example. So Battlecry is whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, right? So if I'm attacking with my Battlecry creature, my partner's creatures are going to get that Battle Cry bonus as well because we are all attacking and blocking together as a team. And this works as well with Battalion, kind of harkening back there to that. This is a gate crash mechanic, serendipitous there. That's when I came back to Magic. So Battalion is a rules text where basically if a creature with Battalion attacks and at least two other creatures are also attacking, some effect happens. And so again, just like Battlecry, Battalion is going to count the creatures that your partner is attacking with as well. So it's very easy to activate these abilities, and they really make sense to be included in a Two-Headed Giant type.
Which rolls up nicely with the idea of Bloodthirst. So because your partner can strike for you and put the points on the board and or yourself, Bloodthirst is a mechanic. If an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 3 1/1 counters on it. In this case, I'm referring to Bloodthirst number 3 under the Blood Lord of Vaskoth. For 3 colorless and 2 swamps, you get a Vampire Warrior 3/3 flying. Whenever you cast a vampire creature spell, it gains Bloodthirst 3, which is kind of flavor text-ish. There's a little bit of vampire presence in this cube, but I'm mostly doing it for that Bloodthirst mechanic so that when Chill goes in with that Battalion or the Battlecry mechanic and he's gotten the points on the board that I needed, I can then follow up and basically drop a 6/6 on the board because it would have been a 3/3 flyer. Now it gets +3/3 counters. Bloodthirst is kind of a 1-2 punch rope-a-dope type idea. It's a little bit slower, but it encourages that, hey, can you get in there and can you get in there and get a strike in there for me because I've got this man. Yeah. So they'll attack in, and then now they've triggered that Bloodthirst. Now you play into it and you get those additional counters on it. This next one is one of my favorites, and I'm gonna Chill. Would you mind covering this next group, please?
Yeah, are we talking friend
Absolutely.
or foe here?
Which one are you before we even start going down? Are you currently friend or are you foe?
Well, what side
I'm not going to tell you that. We're just going to assume. Go ahead. What do you got?
If you're on my side, you're my friend, right? Okay, so again, the Two-Headed Giant and with a multiplayer cube, some mechanics are quite interesting. So friend or foe is a mechanic introduced in Battle Bond, and it also is very similar to voting. So let me read one of these examples for friend or foe. So here we'll talk about it's Vertices Maneuver. This is a black Battle Bond sorcery for 2 and a black. The rules text reads, for each player, choose friend or foe. Then each friend returns a creature card from their graveyard to their hand, and each foe sacrifices a creature they control. So, right, we're in a Two-Headed Giant game. I'm obviously going to choose friend. For my partner, and foe for the 2 players on the other side of the battlefield. So if me and Stu are on a team, we're both returning creatures to our hand from our graveyard. And for you and Christian on the other side of the table, you're both going to have to sacrifice. But might I
include here at UberCube, we do occasionally enjoy libations, and this can be a very passionate game. And we have had, in fact, games where we're sitting across from one another. And as I said before, the 2 purple Sesame Street Two-Headed Giant are not getting along so good. I have seen these spells, and I know it's dumb, actually cast across the table going,
you choose foe for your partner?
Yes, and I have seen this done. Enough is enough. Which moves us on to Zender Split's Judgment. For 4 colorless and 1 blue, you get a sorcery. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend creates a token that's a copy of a creature they control. Each foe returns a creature they control to its owner's hand. Now, you can actually see where that one could be intentional. So that you can actually do the foe for sacrificing if you want to trigger a Blood Artist effect. So these have versatility in it. They may not look like it. You may just assume a binary type of direction here, whereas your partner to the right of you is going to be your friend. But what if, and hear me out, you wanted to use this either for a blink effect or to put something in the graveyard so you can get a death trigger? Do you see where I'm going with this? Creates player agency, even though it doesn't seem so. I love this mechanic, which leads us over to the next one, which is pretty sweet. Would you mind
Well, let me add
Go
on
ahead.
here on the voting mechanic, right? So another example, which isn't friend or foe specific, but it is voting. So there is a pretty common card in more power maxed cubes called Council's Judgment, right? And it's a sorcery for 1 white. If you're not familiar with Council's Judgment, the rules text states will of the council, starting with you, each player votes for a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each permanent with the most votes or tied for the most votes. So in a normal 1v1 game, you're going to pick one of your opponent's permanents and they're going to choose the same permanent, and then that permanent's going to get exiled. But in a multiplayer game, now both you and your partner can vote for a permanent across the table. Do be careful that your opponents could vote for your partner's permanent, even though it's not your permanent. And so you're really able to exile more than one thing, likely, with this card in a multiplayer environment. So kind of like Scheming Symmetry, that Scheming Symmetry got a lot better. Council's Judgment also increases in power in this two-headed variant.
I actually do include I guess it was the Will of the Council, and then there's another council one. I run those type of cards in here because I like the voting mechanism within this, and I also like the fact that it gives the players agency to decide how they want to vote and move around the table, or you could choose multiple targets or a singular target. Yeah. Voting is just really
There's
cool.
A lot of interesting decisions.
It makes for a weird communication between the partner and the other head as well. I know that Chill was pretty keen on taking this next group. Would you mind grabbing this one for me, please?
Yeah, Myriad here. So let me read the rules text. So this next group is Myriad is the mechanic. So Myriad is whenever it or attacks for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Exile the token at the end of combat, right? So if you have a creature with Myriad and you attack with it against your two-headed giant opponent, there are two players on that side of the battlefield. So Myriad is going to make an extra copy of the creature you're attacking with. So you essentially get two attackers for the price of one, and then that created token will exile at the end of combat. So it can really put the pressure on. So one example of this is Wizards of Thay. It is a blue card for 3 and blue. It's a creature human wizard. Power and toughness is 3/3. It has Myriad, just like we explained. And it also has instants and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast, and you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. So let's think how this card works when we attack with Myriad, right? We go to combat, and I attack with my Wizards of Thay. Myriad will trigger for the two opponents, and it'll make a copy of itself. And now during the attack phase, before we get to the end of combat, I will have two Wizards of Thay out, and basically reducing my instants and sorceries in my hand by 1 generic less. So that really is inspiring me to play some sort of combat trick or instant sorcery that I want to get a reduction on that I can play at instant speed, right? Because it has that, it's changing sorceries to be played with flash. So pretty cool card and a very cool mechanic to have included in a two-headed giant.
In addition to that, I run Blade of Cells, and I have other Myriad cards within here that we'll kind of skip over for today. They'll be in the show notes. But that, in case it's a 2-colorless artifact equipment, equip 4. Equip creature has Myriad, covering all the different things that Chill just covered with you. And that allows you to put Myriad on anything. So you can get multiple ETBs off of creatures, for example. Imagine putting this on a Rex Age, right? I know that just cost you $1 billion. You just essentially paid 6. But now you've got every turn whenever you attack, and if you can get through the attack, you can take out multiple targets, and that's why I added that, mostly to just give other options across. This opens up a whole new layer of the onion, right, for dynamics that can happen on the field. All right, we're going to move over to another section, and this is a favorite of mine, and it's going to be a polymorph package, and I've seen this come up in cube forums often, like just that one more card to tip over the edge that I want to include polymorph within said powered vintage environment. And I didn't have to wait. I decided, nah, I'm not going to wait for that critical mass. There's some cards in there that just do this amazing. And the first one is, in fact, polymorph. And for 3 colorless and 1 blue, you get a sorcery. Bury target creature. It could be any target. That's what I love about keyword target in this environment. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of his or her library until a creature card is revealed, and then puts that creature into play under his or her control as though it were just played. That player shuffles all other cards revealed into their library. So essentially, if Chill was playing Squirrel's Nest and he made a little cute squirrel out there and he's running Eldrazi in his deck, I could, as his partner, essentially polymorph that, or vice versa, and then cause him to, get rid of said squirrel and start flopping over until he gets, we'll just say, some Titan or Eldrazi or big nasty Terastodon. Doesn't matter, but it's such an amazing mechanic, and it's definitely rolling dice. It's very Vegas style Magic, and I love it. And I cover that again with one more example here, which will be Proteus Staff. And for 3 colorless, you get a artifact. And for 2 colorless and 1 blue, tap. Put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals a creature card. That player puts that card into play. The rest on the bottom of their library in any order. Play this ability only anytime you could play a sorcery. This is another one of those unique effects where you can convert a squirrel into a triplicate Titan. I've pulled this off, and it kind of correlates into that big boy cheaty. I've got this interesting sneak and show hybrid that I put in here, and I just absolutely love it. Chill, would you mind covering the next voting cards? Some of these are very interesting, and you actually alluded to one of them a few moments ago.
Yeah, so I think the voting cards are just very interesting because they just allow for so much dynamic gameplay between you and your partner and the two-headed giant opponent on the other side of the battlefield. And voting is just one of those fun mechanics that in a 1v1, it's kind of linear, right? But when you get to the 2v2 team gameplay, it just really adds another layer that you don't get in a normal cube. And I think that's just a great, another great aspect of the two-headed giant.
Yeah, the one that you were talking about before was actually, I couldn't remember it when you were talking about Council's Judgment, and I believe that effect was Will of the Council, right? The other mechanic that is Council's Dilemma. If you wouldn't mind, I'll cover one of those just as an example, is Capital Punishment. And it costs 1 billion mana, but it's so interesting. For 4 colorless and 2 swamps, you get a sorcery, Council's Dilemma. Starting with you, each player votes for death or taxes. Each opponent sacrifices a creature for each death vote and discards a card for each taxes vote. I mean, you can see where it cost 1 billion.
Choose your medicine.
Yeah. But isn't that just like, so that's what I'm trying to foster with this environment. And I think that a two-headed giant environment really allows you just to go a little nuts here. Yeah. If I was looking at this from a power min max level, you just pay 6 mana to do a thing. And we can't even cooperate on our mana because that is important to note. In a two-headed giant environment, you cannot share mana pools unless the card specifies.
Yeah, unless we have that assist.
Which also says the same thing with, like, you can't equip someone else's thing on them. It's you have your individual map, your individual play mat in front of you. But these cards allow you to bridge that gap and work together, collaboratively. And that's what I love about it. I'm going to cover this next section because we kind of alluded to it, and it's going to be squirrels. Oh my gosh. And yeah, if anybody's been listening to the pod recently, you know I'm actually in love with squirrels. I've found a way that, I was thinking to myself one day, like, this is getting a little too min-max. I was kind of putting too many cards in there that just didn't represent Anthony as a curator. And then I had this whole binder just full of squirrels. And I was flipping through it one day, and I'm like, oh my God, yes, we're totally 100% doing this. And what it allowed me to open up this whole new world, right, of I could use the polymorph mechanics or the aristocrat mechanics, but I could do it in such a fun, janky, exciting, we're going to enjoy a beer on a Friday night, 4 of us sitting down laughing. Chatterfang, the squirrel general, will do this for you 100%. For 2 colorless and 1 green, you get a legendary creature, Squirrel Warrior. Has Forest Walk, which can be very powerful if one of those opponents just happens to have a forest. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens are created instead. And then for 1 swamp, sacrifice X squirrels. Target creature gets plus X, minus X until the end of the turn, and it's a 3/3. This card just creates this whole new, because there is a token theme hidden within here. So Chill might be making soldiers, and he might be passing them over to me or giving the ability with one of his target cards. I then get squirrels in my end of the fence. And then we can do the polymorphs. We can do the aristocrats. It gets pretty nutty. It just creates this interesting, funny dynamic within the cube. And then I'll follow that up with Squirrel's Nest, which is another fan favorite of mine. It's 1 colorless and 2 forest. You get an enchantment or enchant land. Enchant land means pretty much target. I can put it on chills if I wanted to, if you're my partner. Enchant land has tap. Put a 1/1 green squirrel token onto the battlefield. You can see where you can set yourself up as you could make a support mechanism. I could hand this off to Chill and give him the ability to start defending himself while I'm building up my strategy. It just creates this interesting dynamics when you're working together with a partner. Chill, would you mind covering this next subsection, please?
Okay, yeah. So, hey, thanks, Anthony. The next kind of theme mechanic that we want to cover here is support. So I'm going to give an example of a card here. So this card is Together Forever. It is a white enchantment for white, and it states, when Together Forever enters the battlefield, support 2. So support mechanic says put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And so other rules text on this card is 1 activated ability for 1 generic. Choose target creature with a counter on it. When that creature dies this turn, return that card to its owner's hand. So this is getting back to Anthony's emphasis here on target creatures. So, right, I can target my creatures, I can target my partner's creatures, as well as when I have that support mechanic triggers, putting a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Again, I can help myself out, I can help my partner out, and it's really just emphasizing that team nature of the game.
Yes, and then Capture to the Legax is another card that kind of does this as well. And for 1 colorless and Selesnya, you get an enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. When Capture to the Legax enters the battlefield, support 2. So you can see where you can basically, it's that duck and roll. I can drop down that 1 creature, get it out of the way, and then Chill can come in with the attack because I just gave him 2 additional counters on his creature for potentially lethal. I love these type of cards, that 1/2 punch. The next mechanic, and I'm in love with this mechanic, is Surge. And the way the Surge ability it works is you may cast a spell for its Surge cost if you or a teammate has cast another spell this turn. 2 examples of that would be Overwhelming Denial, which is basically a counter spell that can't be countered. And then it has the reduced cost of for 2 blue, opposed to its actual mana value would be for 2 colorless and 2 blue, you get a really expensive counter spell. However, the Surge cost greatly reduces that. Another one that I'm in love with is Crush of Tentacles. And for 4 colorless and 2 blue, you get a return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If Crush of Tentacles Surge cost was paid, put a 8/8 blue octopus creature token on the battlefield. And the Surge cost is essentially 3 colorless and 2 blue, reducing it by 1. You can see where this kind of sets up, gets everything out of the way, and then you're left with, on your side of the board, a 8/8 blue octopus, which is terrifying. The next one we kind of talked about before is there is a token sub-theme. And then I will have in the show notes included as well a breakdown of the individual guilds. Well, that pretty much, that was just this was intended to be an overview of the Two-Headed Giant environment, which we recently got to play at CubeCon. I'm so glad that Chill got to join for that. For anybody that's interested in how to build one of these, I will include within the show notes both a link to the Cube Cobra link for my design, as well as within the particular show notes, I'll have images, etc. So you can read some of these cards if you're lost about these interesting mechanics such as Assist and Surge and how Aristocrats works in this environment. It just opens up a whole new dynamic of play that just, it doesn't even have relevance in a 1v1, but suddenly you've got this partner. Would you agree, Chill? Just the fun factor is heightened so much in my personal opinion.
I 100% agree. Again, I did not expect, this is no offense to you, right? I did not expect your Two-Headed Giant cube to be as fun as it was. Again, I had the wrong mentality. I didn't have the right sight picture. I'm like, Two-Headed Giant, that's casual. I want to play competitive. I want to spike this thing. But man, I was just so blown away with just how much fun it was working with a teammate and playing Magic. And that's not necessarily even something that you get in Commander and EDH, right? Because that's a 1v1v1
right
format. But the Two-Headed Giant, the shared life totals, the using your resources together, the mechanics that you had built in there with Assist and Surge, it really just made great gameplay and really fostered that collaborative environment. And I personally loved it. Okay, and I do also just want to kind of make a pitch to all the cube curators out there or the potential cube curators. If you're looking to make a Battle Bond cube, the barrier to entry is really quite low. I think a lot of people probably worry like, oh, hey, I need to get the best fixing. Like Anthony, you mentioned you were running some some proxy to dual
Yep.
lands. And proxying's always an answer. But what's cool, what Wizards has done with the two-headed giant or the Battle Bond sets, they've created these dual lands that work specifically in multiplayer formats. For example, in Battle Bond, right, they had cards like Bountiful Promenade, Luxury Suite, Morphic Pool. These are lands that enter untapped if you have two or more opponents, which you always have in a two-headed giant game. And these lands tap for two different colors of mana. So you're getting that excellent fixing with such a low barrier to entry. And so I think I would just urge people like, hey, look at two-headed giant. This seems that this is a super fun format to play. Low barrier of entry to building a cube that is going to function and just suit a lot of fun mechanics that you can include. And I would highly recommend folks to take a look at your cube, Anthony, on Cube Cobra for ideas of themes and mechanics for which they can pull from to support.
All right, cool. So Chill, would you mind, so before we start going into our socials and close out and our happy cubing at the end as we always do, would you mind plugging your particular channel and telling us about how other listeners might find your content, which is amazing, by the way, totally UberCube certified, FYI.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I totally appreciate it. You can find me in two locations. First, I try to stay at least somewhat active on Twitter, and I am at ChillMTGTV on Twitter. All wholesome content, trying to just build that cube community. And then every Friday, you can find a new video from me on YouTube. The new YouTube handles program's pretty cool. So I am at ChillMTGTV as well on YouTube, or just search ChillMTG. I focus on vintage cube content. I'm starting to branch out a little bit, but if you like chill content, super relaxed, have a good time with it, highly edited, focused videos that respect your time, please come check me out on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, and I super appreciate it. But really, again, the goal is just to build that cube community.
And I would agree, not to toot his own horn and pat his back, but I would say every time I watch a show, every time I either learn something or I pick up a new card that maybe I should try out because he just does these amazing evaluations. And then what I complimented him when I first met him is one of my favorite things he does is he does this punt idea. And it's just this interesting way of saying, hey guys, I've made a mistake. Probably shouldn't have done this line of play, but I'm going to put it out there so everybody can learn from this as I am too learning from it. And I just find that so interesting. And the level of humility and interaction with his audience is so strong. So I highly recommend you check out his particular content. It is awesome. Other than that, we're going to move over to our socials. So if you love the show, and we truly, truly, truly hope that you do, myself and Stu and all of our other hosts would truly appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite player. You can also
give it a 5-star.
Yeah, give us the 5 stars. I mean, or you can give, if you can give us 6, that would be ideal. Find us at Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod, or you can reach us at UberCubeMTGPodcast at gmail.com, or you can link us on Discord hashtag UberCube, where we're starting to get the real conversation going. Got some pack one, pick one, some interactions, etc. And then lastly, we have a Patreon at UberCube. It is a landing site you can check out with suites and stuff. And then I'm also working, and I have mentioned this before, I am working on merchandise to help support the show. Other than that, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube, and we're going to say, Happy Cubing!
Happy Cubing!